This podcast is brought to you by Kion Aminos and all Kion products. Watch the video at the end of the podcast for more details.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank J23 for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. Today is a bit of a serious topic, a bit of a heavy topic here. I think it's important though. That's why I'm recording it. About 2 months ago, at the time of the release of this podcast, I heard about two men within a week or so of each other, both in their 40s, both husbands. One was a father, both were sons, brothers, etc. They took their own lives. And Sally is not the first people I've known that have done that. And these weren't weak men. These were men who were carrying something, maybe a lot of things, and never let anyone just see how heavy it had become. Now, if you're a man or you love a man, this conversation matters. This conversation has to happen more, because men are dying in silence, and we've got to stop pretending like everything's fucking fine. It's not. We need to start talking about this. Well, I never met this person. My wife's uncle committed suicide. And like I said, well, I never met him. He took his own life well before I met my wife. I certainly met her cousins and her aunt and and everyone in their family, and the effect that lasting effect even decades later has. I've had a cousin who's succumbed to his own demons. I've had other family members who've lost their partners to this as well. And then there's these two recent people as well. And I want to be respectful of privacy, but I just want to share a little bit of my history with these two men more recently. The first one was a husband of a friend of mine. I had never met him. I've heard tons about him throughout the years that I've known my friend. I never met him in person, but I knew he struggled. I didn't know how much he was struggling, but to be honest, until I heard the news. But I knew he had struggled with some things, and I, had even offered my friend, like, hey, hey, if he wants to talk to me or whatnot. And there's even like a men's group that I thought maybe would be beneficial to him, something like that. But we both recognize, and I'll just say this, like, people need to want to get the help. They need to want to take the action themselves. We can't force anyone to do it. We can help them. We can open the conversation. We'll talk more about that. We can nudge them along, but ultimately people have to want to do the thing for themselves, whether that be going to talk to someone, doing the exercise, eating properly, whatever it is. People have to actually want to do it themselves. So we both recognize that, and obviously that I never did talk to this person. Subsequently, they did go to rehab, or a facility, to a treatment center, and that's probably a better way to put it, to work on their issues. And then they were released, but then found themselves back in. And then that's the last update I had before I heard the terrible news. The second man, again, I never met him in person. I knew his wife. I had met him virtually on a Zoom before, but I never met him in person. By all accounts, seemed like a very fun-loving guy. shortly after I met his wife for the first time, we just had a conversation, over the phone about, her work and, the work I did, et cetera. And she actually brought up that, it might be beneficial um, for her husband. He had some trauma. I don't know the details in his past, to talk to someone and maybe go through my process that I work with people. And I said, yeah, absolutely happy to have a conversation. But again, we both recognize that, the person has to want to do that work. So that was left open. And then again, subsequently from that conversation, I met him in Zoom rooms, what have you. Never had a real one-on-one with him. Never had that conversation about what he might be struggling with. And then, a year later, I heard the news that he's no longer with us. Again, I just want to emphasize, all these examples, anyone, even people, this happening every day, I don't know. These are not weak men. They're fathers, husbands, professionals, people with loved ones. So again, I really want to bring that emphasis. This isn't about blame or anything, that it's about understanding, and maybe, just maybe, and hopefully preventing the next one. Now, just some really quick stats to get out of the way. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death for men under 50 worldwide. In North America, Canada, US, men account for approximately 75% of all suicides. And middle-aged men, 40 to 59, are especially at risk. Now, this is a global stat here. A man dies by suicide roughly every minute. So I don't know how long this episode is going to go. We've already been talking a few minutes. That's a hearty handful of men gone. I don't know where we'll end up. 20 or 30 men will be gone by the time I'm done recording today. Men are 3 to 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, yet are far less likely to seek help. That's tragic. So why are so many men struggling? A number of reasons. Cultural programming. We've been, as a generation, and it's different over the generations, but generally, especially these middle-aged men, the people who are in their 40s to 60s right now, I fall in that group, been culturally programmed, raised to suppress our emotions, to man up, to, boys don't cry, avoid vulnerability and such. Isolation is another factor. We have very few close friends as men age. We often lose our social support systems. Um, Myself too, I wouldn't say I struggle with this, but my friend group is much smaller, and that's partly by design, right? You gotta, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. So, who I choose to hang out with is different than before, and I like to hang out with a smaller group of people than maybe the friend group I had when I was in high school or university or what have you. But speaking of the friend group, if often, not sometimes, even if you have a friend group, and the people you go hang out with, you go camping with, you go, to the sports game or the pub, whatever that your thing is. Sometimes these people are also feeding the same patterns that you're struggling with. So you're hanging out with people, again, you're the average of the 5 people. And if the 5 people you're hanging out with, these other men you're hanging out with, are all also suppressing their emotions, et cetera, that's not probably the best environment for you. Another factor, there's a pressure to provide as men, more so. I mean, of course, everyone, right, in these times we live in, and the economic uncertainties, but rightly or wrongly, it falls even more to the men, or at least that's the pressure we put on ourselves, right? Career stress, financial woes, fear of failure, failed businesses or ventures, etc. There's also another factor is unprocessed trauma, right? From our childhood, potentially even intergenerational. There's trauma that we might have picked up from our parents or grandparents. And certainly, if at least from our childhood, everyone has some level of trauma. And I understand that is a charged word and it is a spectrum, but everyone has some level of trauma from their childhood. We have unprocessed trauma from relationships, maybe health issues. Maybe we're suffering with something. Again, as we're talking about this middle-aged group, 40 to 60, plus or minus, we're starting to see these things, right? Hormones decreasing, et cetera. I'm going to talk about more of that in a minute here. But this is where we're starting to see health challenges. And then, of course, there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's potentially failed businesses. We no longer have the careers we wanted. Again, that middle-aged group is also an age where you're tending to get the layoffs in many industries, et cetera. We're just plain burnout, right? We're trying to do all things. We're trying to be, Superman to the people in our lives, to our wives, to the women in our lives, to our kids, to our friends, whomever, right? Sometimes it's just so heavy. And then the other factors, there's a lack of healthy coping strategies. We tend to turn to distractions. We numb ourselves, with any number of things, including substances. We overwork. We try to, push through that pain. If we're just more productive, if we just do the whatever, the thing. And then, of course, yeah, like I said, substance abuse. Potentially, substance use is a better word, not necessarily abuse, just some substance use, whether it be alcohol, drugs, etc. This includes plant medicine. Now, I'm a huge proponent of plant medicine in the right setting, dose, intention, all that sort of thing, but it can also be overdone. Now, in all the examples I shared earlier with these two men more recently, or anyone from my family instances, I don't know plant medicine or any other substance stuff for a fact, I suspect. But anyway, I just bring it up as we have to be careful with anything we consume in the right dosage. Now, there's an angle here that I want to bring up that many people recognize, but is not typically part of the conversation when we're talking about suicide or men's suicide. Mental health isn't just psychological, it's also physiological as well. There is no mental health and then physical health. Okay, we are one body. I've said this many times. Our mental health impacts our physical health impacts our mental health. It is a loop. We are one being. 90% of serotonin is produced in our gut. Many other neurochemicals are produced in our gut. Gut dysbiosis, or an imbalance of our microbiome, can lead to inflammation, anxiety, depression symptoms, not to mention other manifestations of physical ailments as well. Poor gut health can come from many things. Certainly the foods, highly processed foods, industrial seed oils, etc., alcohol use, definitely chronic stress. Again, whether you're running your own business or you work any type of job, just life these days, we get chronic stress. It's certainly if our relationships are having challenges, anything. Chronic stress comes in many forms. So processed food, alcohol, chronic stress, overuse of medications, antibiotics, all sorts of things, any type of prescription medications, all these things worsen our mood and our brain function. Leaky gut, which is systemic inflammation, this can reach the brain, lends itself to, it's now termed leaky brain, which impairs our cognition, our emotional regulation. And again, this is a self-fulfilling cycle, right? We don't take care of our physical body, it leads to mental impairments or issues. Then trying to overcome them, we do other things that actually impact our physical body again, makes it worse, and it's a vicious cycle. And sometimes it's the other way. It starts with the neurological and works its way to the physical. Again, we're one body. So what are some of the things that one could do from a physiological point of view? Potentially, again, I'm not always the biggest proponent of probiotics, but that is potentially something. Gut healing protocols, quality nutrition, reducing stress, whether that be mindfulness or gratitude practice, a spiritual practice, meditation, anything. There's many things we can do to reduce stress. There's a lot of different ways we can heal our gut. Again, through nutrition, having quality nutrition, potentially there's supplementation. There's a lot of different things. I just really want to make the point that, again, I think it's under talked about when we're talking about mental health. It's not in isolation, and there's a lot of things we can do physically or our physical health that actually will benefit our mental health and vice versa. Some other things, contributing factors, hormonal imbalances. So, right, this gets talked a lot about with women for sure, and that is important as well. A little bit less talked about for men. So low testosterone can play a role. High cortisol, again. So our stress response, how much stress we're carrying for not dealing with that stress, can lead to high cortisol. We have a trend in our society of testosterone lowering. Men younger and younger are having lower and lower testosterone for a variety of reasons. Our environment, chemicals, all sorts of things. Save that for another talk, another time. I've talked about that before. But if you have low testosterone and your other hormones are not balanced, this also affects not only our physical health, but affects our mental health as well. Not sleeping properly. If there's one single high level thing that we can do for our health, it's proper sleep. And when we are sleep deprived, there's major link towards depression and emotional dysregulation. So just trying to get better sleep. Again, if we're suffering with some medical condition, that affects our sleep, and then that lack of sleep affects our physical and mental health, and again, it's a vicious cycle. But sleep is super, super important for emotional regulation and helping with symptoms of depression. There's potentially, if one was to do a genetic test like I've done and like I do with my clients, one might be predisposed to things that we are labeling, again, I'm using air quotes here, as mental health. So ADHD, propensity for depression, etc. Again, these are not necessarily, like I like to say, anything that comes from your DNA test is not a life sentence. It's just now it gives you some indications of how you need to put lifestyle practices in to make sure you don't switch those genes on or off as it may be. So I think that's really important as well. Other contributing factors are toxic digital environment we have these days. We're constant comparison of people on social media or what have you. Like they make more money than me, they're leaner than me, they're stronger than me, et cetera, et cetera. That doom scrolling, whether it be on your phone or just watching the goddamn news, whatever it is, right? That doom scrolling. There's also a lack of real connection, right? Again, maybe we have our friend group, but are we just hanging out with them for the sake of like, I just know these guys for the last 20 years, so like I'm just still hanging out with the same crew, or have we actually surround ourselves with the people that really fill us up, that really empower us to be the best version of ourselves? Tied to that is kind of related is, there's a lot of men that have, maybe sort of younger men than the middle-aged men, but they have porn addiction. They have unrealistic expectations of women, and thus they don't have healthy relationships, or have a hard time getting healthy relationships. Or if they are in a relationship, they're married or whatever, maybe there's, maybe that's part of the challenge as well. So all these things are contributing factors. Just going back to lack of connection. Again, some men, yes, they have their bowling group or their softball team or whatever, and maybe there's some unhealthy patterns that just kept getting reinforced there. And there's not enough men that maybe have those strong role models or that really healthy men's connection or men's group or whatever, that are not focused on the drinking and the partying and the whatever, but more on talking about our real feelings and what's really going on at a deeper level. And then, and the last kind of, contributing factor I want to talk about is, there's a stigma around therapy or coaching that, a real man doesn't need that, or that's not for me, or again, back to those things we've been conditioned sometimes as men for. And that, therapy or coaching is seen as a last resort for many men. Whereas if that awareness or that stigma was gone, maybe that'd be something that would be done way earlier in the process, years earlier, and not to the point where you're at your end of the rope, so to speak, um, before you even look into those type of things. So, what needs to change? Certainly, the dialogue around this, and the awareness. And I'm hoping I'm playing a tiny, tiny little role in that right now. We need to talk about it earlier, right? So, both you as the man watching this and you as the woman or the support system or the family member, whatever, don't wait until someone is in crisis. We need to start the conversation earlier. You need to train yourself to notice the signs. Is it withdrawal? Is it anger or unusual anger? Is it apathy, reckless behavior that's come out of nowhere, uh, suspected substance abuse, or even, and here's another thing to look at that maybe feel that sudden calm after an intense distress. If you've gone through something as a family, or your friend or this person you're concerned about has gone through something very stressful that anyone would have stressful, and then all of a sudden they seem unusually calm, that can also be a sign. We really want to encourage real conversation, real in depth. And I'll be guilty as this myself, how's it going? How's work? Very superficial stuff. Like really get to the root. And again, I understand you're not going to do this with every man right? But the men that are the closest to you, the ones you really care about, you need to go a little bit deeper. Probe, ask that little bit of question. We need to give men permission to feel and process their emotions, what's going on with them. Now, women, and I'm speaking to you directly now, you are often the emotional lifeline to the men in your life, to your partner. Don't be afraid to ask, push, and challenge. And I know what some of you are thinking. It's hard enough to get him to talk. That starts a fight, and we're already having some challenges in our relationship, or we're just trying to survive financially, or the kids are such a handful and we're running around to kids' activity, whatever it is. I get it. But you need to push sometimes. You need to ask, you need to challenge, because the alternative is losing that man, is your kids not having a father, and every other variation of that. So I don't want to put the extra burden on you women, but you are the emotional lifeline. You have to play a role as well. We have to take responsibility. I said that right at the top. We have to want to get the help, but sometimes we need that nudge, and that's the role that you can play. Now, I just want to briefly, I've talked about this many times before. I do want to mention it very briefly here. I help people release long-held negative emotions, whether that be anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, rage, or shame, through a trio of modalities, primarily timeline therapy, neurolinguistic programming, and hypnosis. Address those unconscious blocks, those negative emotions that your unconscious mind is suppressing, that are keeping you stuck in those loops of suffering. It's just not just therapy. It's not just hacking your mindset. It's releasing those emotions at the root level, at the root cause, again, from your childhood. An emotional detox, if you will, limiting belief detox, if you will. Now, I'm not trying to make this a sales pitch here or nothing like that. I just want to share because, again, in those two most recent instances, one, the first being maybe a little more passively, the second, actually having a conversation with my friend, the person's wife, about dealing with this, and it never happened. So again, I just want to share this is work that I do, that my colleagues do, that my peers do to help people overcome these negative emotions and limiting beliefs, amongst other things. And again, it's applied all over, not just for men who are struggling emotionally or with mental health, but it can help get you on the funk, out of the funk, and thinking a different way. So again, if someone is struggling, if you are watching and you're struggling, or your husband or your brother or your son or whomever is struggling, I'm here. Okay. No pressure. This is not a sales pitch, no judgment, just an authentic conversation so they can get the help they need, whatever that is, and whomever that's from. And there's tons of resources out there. So as I to come to a close here, this is for both the men and the women, but particularly for you men. Men, you don't need to be fixed. You just need to be seen, heard, and supported. You're not broken. You're human. And while sometimes it might not seem like it, you matter more than you know to everyone in your life, to your partner, certainly to your kids, to your parents, to your siblings, to your friends, everyone. You matter more than you know. Even when it doesn't sometimes feel like it, you matter more than you know, and everyone loves you and cares for you and wants the best for you. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid of what other people will think, of how you think they will perceive you. Because trust me, everyone wants to help you and wants to see you succeed in overcoming whatever you're struggling with. Just ask for help. Just ask for help. That's all I got for today. I thank you all for watching the Deepak Sandy Show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you. And remember, men, you are exceptional. Don't anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let yourself tell yourself otherwise. You are exceptional. I'm going to throw it to J23, who's going to play us out with some music. Don't forget to check out today's show sponsors at the end of the show here. Particularly some of these things around gut health and supporting your gut health. So check out J23's music. She's awesome. Check out the show sponsor. Men, ask for the help you need. Till next time. This podcast was sponsored by Kion and Kion Aminos in particular. This is my favorite post-workout thing to do. People are always talking about you need more protein. It's super important, especially as we age, as we're trying to maintain our lean muscle mass. Super important for both men and women. And essentially protein, that chicken, those eggs, whatever you're taking, breaks down into amino acids, which is what our body actually needs, what our muscle tissues actually uses. And essential amino acids, which these are, is what your body cannot produce, but they are essential for you. So you need to get them from food. And as with many other things, we're not getting the same nutrients anymore from our foods. And certainly if we're not eating the right protein sources, we're not getting our essential amino acids. So I love the Kion brand, number one, because they stay on top of the research. They are always reiterating their formula when new research comes out, and they're tweaking it. I think they've tweaked it 2 or 3 times already. So I love that about a brand. I use this myself to build lean muscle mass and maintain my muscle mass as I'm aging. So use a coupon code there to get 10% off of not only the essential amino acids, but all Kion products as well.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company